of Hill and Smith, who had stepped up the last two games. They combined in the first half for 0 total points.
Look at Brown, Rozier, and Marcus Morris. They combined to go 12 of 31, and they absolutely dominated Cleveland as a team. Your perimeter scorers doing that isn't typically a recipe for being an offensive-heavy team like Cleveland. I think Cleveland's fatigue showed. I think their lack of rotational continuity showed. The turnovers were just really key, Smitty.
Yeah, it is. But, Griff, I go back to something you said. Is there anybody else on that floor besides LeBron that can get somebody an easy basket when I would say the offense breaks down? I mean, who can ad-lib and go out there and make a play for themselves or for somebody else? They're limited in that situation. So that's why I think it's so much on LeBron. They have to run their offense, and they're going to have to find a way to run some offense where they might even have to run some flex, where guys just move and be able to get some shots without LeBron James being on the floor sometime.
And we showed it, a couple of those Kyle Korver clips. He generates his own gravity. They're overreacting to Kyle coming off of screens to such a degree that Jaylen Brown gets the holding foul on the slip. You can see they're overreacting to him. They fear him enormously. Cleveland doesn't have anybody else that scares you beyond Kevin, who really needs to feed off of LeBron and LeBron. So at a minimum, you need to start to generate some movement with Kyle.
You know, let's go back to kind of where we were before, and we went to a break, but you talk about the J.R. Smith scenario. Fantastic in the games at home to help them get here. We knew he's important. Ty Lue's talked about it. LeBron's talked about it. Smitty, this was a frustrating. Forget the shooting and all of that, and he only scored 2 points. But, again, back to the bad fouls, not being in the right spot. There were a couple of opportunities to close out on Marcus Smart where he was in position, yet kind of made lazy defensive plays. Do you consider putting Kyle Korver in to start? What do you do with the lineup if you're Ty Lue?
And obviously, I think you still can play those two together. You just got to play Kyle Korver. You can find some minutes. But I talked about it before the game started. Yes, you need JR's offense, but I think he had to be huge defensively, and he was not tonight. I think JR has to lock in, has the ability on both ends to make an impact. The shooting goes in and out, but I think that one thing is you got to be able to count on his defense and him being locked in the game. He didn't do that tonight.
All right, we got a chance to welcome in our good buddy Joe Borgia, NBA Senior Vice President of Replay Referee Operations. Just wanted to match you here, Joe, with the glasses. A few plays to talk about tonight. Let's start with the Al Horford screen. What happens here to warrant the offensive foul, Joe?
Well, Casey, you know, Al actually starts in a legal position. The problem is when Hill tries to go around them, he readjusts. And what he's going to do is he's going to take a step to his right and then turn his body and bend over. So he sort of hip checks him, gets him with his butt, which sends him on a longer path around. So that's where it became legal. It's not one of the normal ones where, you see a guy throw his elbow out. Al was legal, but when he turned and bent over and stuck his rear end out and contacted Hill, that's when it became an illegal screen.
Joe, we've got a couple of plays where LeBron drives to the basket. One, he's given free throws. The other, he's not. So take us through the difference between the two plays here.
Well, Casey, you have two very similar plays, yet they're totally different. So you always hear us talk about the gather. So on drives to the basket, a player has to have gathered the ball prior to the foul to be considered shooting. And on that play there, you saw he didn't. But here, he's got two hands on the ball, so he gathered. Here they are side by side. And the first foul on Tatum is clearly when he's still dribbling, and the second one by Morris is after he's got two hands on the ball, which is clearly a gather. So on the two-hand one, he's given continuation. On the other one, because he was still technically dribbling, had not ended it by cupping it, bringing it over, getting two hands on it. The fouls were at two different spots of the end of the play. So, therefore, one time it was continuation and one time it wasn't.
Joe, appreciate it as always. We'll talk to you again soon, I'm sure.
All right, Casey. Good to be with you.
All right, you too. There's Joe Borgia joining us. Always great to get his insight on board. We talk about toughness in this series, and it kind of has gone back and forth. Looked like the young kids were young for the first time probably in the playoff run, right, Griff, during the course of the games on the road. The toughness came back tonight, all of that culture, that it thing. How does Boston now bring that back? Apparently, whatever they did the first two, they couldn't take. How do they make it stick this time? going
Well,
into Game
it's
6.
interesting. I mean, they're one of 6, I believe, on the road throughout all of the playoffs, not just this series. Energy and effort travels, and they tend to travel that. But what happens is the teams like Cleveland that are playing at home, all their role players are much more comfortable. LeBron, who himself has admitted he's tired, has a jolt of energy from the home crowd. So when he picks up his level and they can match the intensity of Boston, now it's about Boston's ability to identify a go-to scorer and to continue to score at the rate that Cleveland does.
Which Tatum did tonight. I wanted to ask you about the adjustment Brad Stevens made. You had talked about Smitty in pregame. You were wondering what the adjustment would be. It was in the starting lineup. Baines comes in, who's done a heck of a job, by the way. I know Joel Embiid had the joke on the tweet. He's done a really nice job. Morris comes off the bench, who had been guarding LeBron. Morris actually played great in that role, which he's been most of the season. What did you think of the adjustment?
Well, I loved it because I think it had bodies in front of LeBron James, and also I think it kept big bodies in front of him. Then I think also Baines was a guy who did a nice job of being able to also be accountable offense. He didn't score a lot, but he was okay. He was a guy that you just looked at and said couldn't just leave him alone. And I think it really helped Al Horford for another guy to go down there and bang with him. If you're a guy like Al Horford and you're the last line of defense, you're hesitant to go out and step out because so much to build back to rebound. When you know Baines you had back there, it helped him. And like you said, Morris could come off the bench and get him some energy. And it kept Morris out of foul trouble. One of those wings versus LeBron James, and right now he's the best option versus LeBron.
You know, Ty Lue mentioned it, but I think the irony is people are going to look at this and they say, oh, well, you know, if they just look at the box score, Boston must have played well at home again and everything. Well, they didn't shoot the ball well at all. And really the guard play, there were 7 out of 30 between Rozier and Brown. If I would have told you, Griff, you're the Cavaliers, you're going to get those two guys go 7 out of 30, and you're going to shoot 36%, you're going to feel pretty good about that. So I think the Celtics can probably take some solace, right, that they won the game and didn't play their best game. They'll look for a bounce-back game from those two guards in Game 6.
Yeah, if you told me just that component of it, I would say, wow, they escaped. But
Right.
if you add to it that they're 2 guards for Cleveland, the starting 2 guards for Cleveland,
I was going to leave that out.
2 of 11,
Yep.
then I think that's what you're
9
going to get.
points.